Chicago looked beautiful in winter. Downtown lights reflected across frozen streets. Snow covered the rooftops of quiet neighborhoods, and inside a large brick home on the north side, the Bennett family gathered for what was supposed to be a normal birthday dinner. But honestly, nothing about that night would stay normal for long, especially not after 8:47 p.m. That was the exact moment 32-year-old Ryan Bennett noticed his father acting strange. Very strange. Richard Bennett wasn't an emotional man. Never had been. The man barely even cried when his own business almost collapsed years earlier. But tonight, he looked nervous. Distracted. Like he was carrying something heavy nobody else could see. "Dad, you okay?" Ryan asked while pouring drinks at the dining table. Richard forced a smile quickly. "Yeah, just tired." But Ryan didn't buy it, not even close. Across the table, Ryan's younger sister Chloe noticed it to their mother. Diane, however, stayed unusually quiet all evening. Honestly, the entire house felt tense, like everyone was pretending things were normal while silently waiting for something bad to happen. Then came the knock at the door. 3 slow knocks, the kind that instantly changes the energy in a room. Everyone looked up. Richard's face immediately lost color. And that's when Ryan knew something was seriously wrong. "I'll get it," Chloe said casually. But before she could stand, Richard spoke sharply. "No." Too sharply. The room froze. Even Diane looked startled. Richard quickly stood up from the table. Ryan exchanged confused looks with Chloe while their father walked toward the front door. Then something happened Ryan would never forget. The second Richard opened the door, he whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Ryan's stomach tightened instantly, because his father sounded scared. Not annoyed, scared. From the dining room, nobody could fully see the person outside, only part of a dark winter coat. Snow falling behind them, and silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Finally Ryan stood up. "Dad." Richard immediately turned around. "Stay inside." But it was too late. Ryan had already seen the woman standing outside. Mid-50s. Blonde hair, tired eyes, and honestly, something about her face felt strangely familiar. The woman looked directly at Ryan for several seconds before quietly saying, "Wow." Her voice cracked emotionally. "You look just like him." Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then Diane suddenly stood up so fast her wine glass tipped over onto the tablecloth. "What is she doing here?" Diane snapped. The woman looked heartbroken instantly. "I didn't come to fight." Richard looked completely panicked now. "Please," he whispered quietly, "not tonight." But the woman shook her head slowly. "You said that 20 years ago too." Ryan felt his chest tighten. What was happening? Chloe looked equally confused. "Dad, who is this?" Richard opened his mouth, then closed it again. Like he physically couldn't force the words out. That's when the woman finally looked directly at Ryan again, quietly said the sentence that shut the entire family in seconds. "My name is Vanessa Cole." She paused emotionally. "And your father has been lying to all of you for over 30 years. Silence. Pure silence. Ryan actually laughed nervously at first. Because honestly, the situation felt unreal. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa slowly reached into her purse. Richard immediately stepped forward. "Don't." But she ignored him. Then she pulled out an old photograph, and Ryan's blood ran cold, because the young man standing beside Vanessa in the picture looked exactly like him. Same eyes, same jawline, same smile, except it wasn't Ryan. The photo looked old, maybe late 1980s. Vanessa's hands trembled slightly while holding it. "That's my son," she whispered. Nobody in the room breathed. Then she said the words that changed everything forever. "And Richard Bennett is his father." Diane looked like the floor disappeared beneath her feet. Chloe covered her mouth in shock. Ryan stared at his father in disbelief. No way. Richard looked emotionally destroyed now. But the worst part, he didn't deny it, not even once. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I spent 31 years keeping this secret because Richard begged me to." Ryan stepped backward slowly. "What secret?" Vanessa looked directly at him, then quietly answered, "You have an older brother." The room exploded emotionally after that. "What?" Chloe shouted. Diane looked ready to collapse. Ryan couldn't even process what he was hearing anymore. "An older brother? How was that possible?" Richard finally spoke, his voice shaking badly. "It happened before I met your mother." Vanessa immediately snapped back, emotionally. That's not the whole truth, and you know it. Another silence. Another horrifying silence, and suddenly Ryan realized something terrifying. Whatever his father was hiding was much bigger than an old affair. Then Vanessa quietly revealed one final thing before anyone could stop her. My son disappeared 6 months ago. The room went completely still, and the next sentence nearly stopped Ryan's heart. Before he vanished, he told me he was finally ready to meet his real family. The dining room felt ice cold. Nobody moved. Nobody even looked at the birthday cake still sitting, untouched on the kitchen counter. Ryan stared at his father like he was looking at a complete stranger. You have another son? He asked quietly. Richard looked physically sick now. It's complicated. Chloe immediately snapped. Oh, that's your explanation right now? Diane pushed her chair back slowly, her face pale with shock. How long? She whispered. Richard looked at her helplessly. Diane, how long? The pain in her voice silenced the entire room. Vanessa wiped tears from her eyes before answering for him. 31 years. Diane looked like she might collapse, because suddenly every memory inside her marriage felt fake. Every anniversary, every family photo. Every promise. Ryan honestly didn't know who to feel angry at first. His father, Vanessa, himself for somehow never noticing anything. Then Vanessa carefully placed another photograph on the dining table. This one showed a young man standing beside Lake Michigan, dark jacket. Snow falling behind him. He looked around, 28 or 29 years old, and again, the resemblance was unbelievable. Chloe stared at the picture in shock. Oh my God. Ryan couldn't stop staring either. The guy looked so much like him, it honestly felt disturbing. Same eyes, same smile. Even the way he stood looked familiar. What's his name? Ryan finally asked quietly. Vanessa swallowed emotionally. Caleb. For some reason, hearing his name made everything suddenly feel real. Not just drama. Not just some shocking family secret. A real person existed out there somewhere, or at least used to. Vanessa sat down slowly at the dining table. Didn't come here to destroy your family. Diane laughed bitterly through tears. A little late for that. Richard closed his eyes painfully, but Vanessa kept speaking. Caleb spent years asking about his father. She looked directly at Richard, and every single time, I protected you. Richard couldn't even look at her anymore. Ryan noticed his father's hands trembling slightly. That scared him more than yelling would have, because Richard Bennett never looked weak. Ever. Then Vanessa said something that instantly changed the atmosphere again. 6 months ago, Caleb hired a private investigator. Ryan frowned. To find Dad. Vanessa nodded slowly. He said he was tired of feeling like half a person. Silence filled the room again. Honestly, that sentence hit Ryan harder than expected, because suddenly this mystery brother didn't feel like some random stranger anymore. He felt human. Lonely. Abandoned. Vanessa continued softly. He found Richard's name, your address, everything. Diane sat down slowly, like her legs could barely hold her anymore. And you're saying he disappeared after that? Vanessa nodded. He called me one night saying he was finally going to meet his father. Her voice cracked emotionally. That was the last real conversation we ever had. Ryan's chest tightened. What do you mean, real conversation? Vanessa looked terrified now. 3 days later, Caleb called again. The room became completely silent. Vanessa's breathing became shaky. He sounded scared. Richard finally looked up. What did he say? Vanessa stared directly at him. He said somebody didn't want the truth coming out. Every hair on Ryan's arm stood up instantly. What? Vanessa reached into her purse again and pulled out her phone. Then, she played a voicemail. The second Caleb's voice filled the room, everyone froze. Mom, if anything happens to me, there's something you need to know. The recording crackled slightly. Caleb sounded nervous, out of breath, like he was walking quickly somewhere. I met someone connected to Richard Bennett. Ryan glanced at his father immediately. Richard looked horrified. Then Caleb continued, and they warned me to stop digging into the past. Diane whispered, oh my God. The voicemail continued. I think Dad's hiding something bigger than us. Ryan's heartbeat sped up. What bigger thing? Then Caleb suddenly lowered his voice in the recording. There was another woman, Mom. Richard instantly stood up. Turn it off. Vanessa ignored him. Caleb's voice grew shakier, and I think whatever happened to her. Static interrupted the audio briefly. Then came the final sentence. is why Dad spent 30 years lying." The voicemail ended. Nobody spoke. Nobody even breathed properly. Ryan slowly looked toward his father. Richard's face had gone completely pale. "What woman?" Ryan asked quietly. Richard didn't answer. "Dad?" Still nothing. Then Chloe suddenly realized something terrifying. "Wait." Everyone looked at her. She pointed at Richard slowly. "You knew Caleb was looking for us, didn't you?" Richard's silence answered everything. Ryan stepped backward emotionally. "You knew." Richard rubbed his face with trembling hands. "I was trying to protect this family." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "No, you were protecting yourself." Then she revealed the one detail that changed the entire night. The private investigator Caleb hired died in a car crash 2 months ago. Ryan felt his stomach drop instantly. "What?" Vanessa nodded slowly. "Police called it an accident." Nobody missed the fear in her voice. And honestly, for the first time all night, Ryan stopped seeing this as family drama. Something about this suddenly felt dangerous. Then Vanessa quietly admitted something even worse. "I think Caleb found out what really happened 30 years ago." Richard slammed his hand onto the table suddenly. ENOUGH. Everyone jumped. Richard's breathing became heavy. Now. Almost panicked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Vanessa stared at him with tears in her eyes. "Then tell them the truth." Ryan looked directly at his father. And for the first time in his life, he saw genuine fear inside Richard Bennett's eyes. Not embarrassment, not guilt, fear. Then the doorbell rang again. 3 sharp knocks. Everyone froze instantly. And downstairs, someone had just slipped an old photograph underneath the front door. Nobody moved. The photograph rested halfway beneath the front door, while snow blew softly against the porch outside. The entire house felt frozen. Ryan slowly stepped toward it first. "Ryan, wait," Diane whispered nervously, but he ignored her. Honestly, at this point, fear was already mixed with anger, confusion, and adrenaline. Nothing about the night made sense anymore. Ryan bent down and picked up the photograph carefully. The second he looked at it, his stomach dropped. It was another old picture, faded around the edges, taken sometime in the early 1990s. 3 people stood outside a lake house somewhere. A younger Richard Bennett, a woman Ryan had never seen before, and a little boy around 4 years old. Caleb. That wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part was what someone had written across the bottom in black marker. "Ask Richard what happened to Elise." Ryan slowly looked up. "Who's Elise?" Richard's face immediately lost all color. Nobody answered. Chloe grabbed the photo from Ryan's hand and stared at it. "Oh my God." Diane looked confused and emotional at the same time. "You know her?" Chloe shook her head slowly. "No, but I've seen this woman before." Everyone turned toward her instantly. "What?" Ryan asked. Chloe looked unsettled now. "She used to send Christmas cards years ago." Richard snapped immediately. "Chloe." But she ignored him. "I remember because Mom used to throw them away before Dad got home." Diane looked horrified. "What?" Richard rubbed both hands over his face. The man looked like he was falling apart in real time. Vanessa stared at him bitterly. "You should have told them the truth years ago." Ryan's patience finally broke. "What truth?" His voice echoed through the house. Nobody answered fast enough. Then suddenly another knock. This one, louder, harder. Everyone jumped again. Ryan walked quickly toward the window beside the front door and peeked through the blinds. Nobody was there. Only snow falling across the empty porch. But taped beside the mailbox outside was a small brown envelope. Ryan immediately opened the door and grabbed it. The freezing Chicago wind rushed inside while Diane nervously locked the door behind him. Again, inside the envelope was a newspaper clipping. Yellowed. Ryan unfolded it slowly, and the headline instantly made the room silent again. "Local woman missing after lake house fire." Ryan's heartbeat sped up. Underneath the headline was a photo. The same woman from the picture. Elise Harper, missing since 1993. Ryan slowly looked toward his father. "What is this?" Richard looked completely broken now. Vanessa crossed her arms emotionally. "Tell them." Diane stepped backward slowly. No, like deep down, she was already terrified of the answer. Ryan kept reading the article aloud. Elise, Harper disappeared after a fire destroyed part of a lake property owned by local businessman Richard Bennett. The room exploded. Instantly. What? Chloe shouted. Diane stared at Richard in disbelief. You told me that fire happened before we met. Richard finally spoke, his voice shaking badly. It did. Then why was she there? Diane snapped. Richard opened his mouth, then stopped. Ryan honestly couldn't breathe properly anymore. Every answer only created worse questions. Then Vanessa quietly revealed another horrifying detail. Elise wasn't just some woman. Richard knew. Ryan looked at her. Eyes filled with tears. She was engaged to him. Pure silence. Diane physically stumbled backward. No. Ryan looked between both women and his father in complete disbelief. You were engaged to someone else while seeing Mom, Richard whispered. It wasn't like that. Vanessa laughed bitterly. That's exactly what it was. Then, Chloe suddenly noticed something. Inside the envelope Ryan was still holding theirs. Another paper. Ryan pulled it out carefully. This one looked newer. Printed recently. At the top was a single typed sentence. Caleb discovered what really happened the night Elise disappeared. Ryan's chest tightened instantly. And below it was an address. A storage unit somewhere, near downtown Chicago. Diane immediately looked terrified. No, absolutely not. But Ryan already grabbed his coat. I'm going. Richard stood up quickly. Not going anywhere. Ryan turned toward him slowly. You don't get to control this anymore. That sentence hit hard. Because for the first time in his life, Ryan sounded exactly like a man who no longer trusted his father. Vanessa quietly stood too. I'm coming with you. Richard's voice became desperate. Now, you have no idea what you're walking into. Ryan stared directly at him. Then explain it. Richard stayed silent. Again. And honestly, that silence finally told Ryan everything he needed to know. Whatever happened to Elise Harper 30 years ago, his father knew far more than he admitted. 20 minutes later, snow covered the streets as Ryan drove downtown with Vanessa sitting beside him silently. The city lights reflected across icy roads while tension filled the car. Finally, Ryan asked quietly, what was Caleb really looking for? Vanessa looked out the window emotionally. He thought Elise's disappearance was connected to him somehow. Ryan frowned. Vanessa swallowed nervously, then quietly answered, because before Caleb vanished, she paused. He told me he thought Elise might actually be his mother. Ryan nearly slammed the brakes. What? Vanessa looked terrified now too. I didn't believe him at first. Ryan's mind spun instantly. None of this made sense anymore. If Elise was Caleb's mother, then who exactly was Vanessa, and why had Richard lied to everyone for decades? Then Ryan noticed something strange in the rearview mirror. A black SUV had been following them for the last 6 blocks. And suddenly, the night became even more dangerous. Ryan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The black SUV stayed directly behind them as snow continued falling across downtown Chicago. At first, he tried convincing himself it was coincidence. But then he changed lanes. The SUV changed lanes too. Vanessa noticed immediately. Ryan, I know. Her breathing became shaky. Oh my God. Ryan's heartbeat sped up fast. Honestly, everything about this night already felt unreal. But now, it was crossing into something darker, more dangerous. He quickly turned onto a quieter side street near an old warehouse district. The SUV followed again. No hesitation. No delay. Vanessa grabbed the edge of her seat nervously. This is insane. Ryan tried staying calm. Maybe they're just going the same direction. But deep down, he already knew that wasn't true. The black SUV suddenly flashed its headlights once. Then twice, like a warning. Ryan's stomach tightened instantly. What do they want? Vanessa looked terrified now. Caleb said somebody was watching him too before he disappeared. That sentence made the entire car feel colder. Ryan immediately pulled into a crowded gas station. The SUV slowed down near the entrance. For a second, Ryan thought they might stop too. But instead, the vehicle drove past slowly and disappeared into traffic. Vanessa exhaled shakily. Ryan looked at her carefully. You really think Caleb uncovered something serious? Vanessa nodded slowly. I think he got too close to the truth. 10 minutes later, they finally reached the storage facility downtown. The place looked old and half abandoned. Only one dim security light flickered near the front office, while snow piled against rusted fences. Honestly, it looked like the kind of place people avoided. After dark, Ryan stepped out first. Cold air hit instantly. Vanessa wrapped her coat tighter around herself while following him inside. The front office was empty. No receptionist. No music. Nothing. Only the buzzing sound of old fluorescent lights overhead. Ryan checked the paper again. Unit 214. They walked through narrow storage hallways surrounded by rows of metal doors. Every footstep echoed. Vanessa looked visibly nervous now. I don't like this. Ryan didn't either, but he needed answers. When they finally reached Unit 214, both stopped walking. The lock was already broken, freshly broken. Ryan looked at Vanessa slowly. Someone's been here. The storage door sat slightly open. Just enough to reveal darkness inside. Ryan pulled out his phone flashlight carefully and stepped forward. The second the light swept across the room, both of them froze. The entire unit had been trashed. Boxers ripped open, papers scattered everywhere, furniture overturned, like someone had desperately searched for something. Oh my God, Vanessa whispered. Ryan slowly walked deeper inside. Then his flashlight landed on a large corkboard, leaning against the back wall, covered in photographs. Newspaper clippings, maps, names, connected with red string. It looked insane, like something from a crime documentary. And right in the center was Richard Bennett's photograph. Ryan stepped closer carefully. Underneath Richard's picture were 3 words written in black marker. He knows everything. Ryan's chest tightened. Then he noticed another picture beside it. Elise Harper. And beneath her photo, last seen alive, October 14, 1993. Vanessa covered her mouth emotionally. Caleb really believed this. Ryan kept scanning the board. Then, suddenly he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Another photograph. Himself, pinned beside Richard. What the hell? Vanessa stared too. There were notes written around Ryan's photo. Did Richard tell him? Possible inheritance issue. Check birth records. Ryan felt physically sick. What inheritance issue? Then his flashlight landed on one final note, pinned near the bottom. And suddenly, everything changed. The note read, Caleb believed Richard Bennett had TWO children before marrying Diane. Ryan stopped breathing for a second. But that made no sense. He looked at Vanessa immediately. Only told us about Caleb. Vanessa looked confused too, because Caleb was the only child I knew about. Ryan stared back at the board. Then he noticed another name written faintly near Elise's photo, a little girl's name, Sophia Harper. Ryan frowned. Who's Sophia? Vanessa slowly shook her head. I've never heard that name before. Then, suddenly, a loud metallic bang echoed somewhere outside the storage unit. Both jumped instantly. Footsteps. Somebody was inside the building. Ryan immediately turned off his flashlight. The hallway outside became almost completely dark. Only distant flickering lights remained. The footsteps grew closer. Slow. Heavy. Vanessa whispered nervously. Ryan. Then a shadow appeared briefly underneath the storage door opening. Somebody stopped directly outside Unit 214. Neither of them moved, neither even breathed properly. Then suddenly, a man's voice spoke quietly from outside the door. You shouldn't have come here. Ryan's blood ran cold, because he recognized the voice immediately. It belonged to his father. Ryan stood frozen inside the dark storage unit. His heart pounded violently against his chest while snowstorm winds rattled somewhere outside the building. You shouldn't have come here. Richard Bennett's voice sounded exhausted. Not angry, not threatening, just emotionally broken. Vanessa slowly stepped backward, nervously. Ryan turned his flashlight back on. His father stood outside the storage unit, wearing a dark winter coat dusted with snow. And honestly, he looked older than Ryan had ever seen him. Tired. Defeated. Like 30 years of secrets were finally crushing him all at once. Ryan stared at him in disbelief. You followed us. Richard stepped inside carefully. I was trying to protect you. Ryan laughed bitterly. That's becoming your favorite sentence tonight. Richard looked around at the destroyed storage unit and closed his eyes painfully. He found everything. Vanessa crossed her arms emotionally. Then maybe you should finally tell the truth. For several seconds, Richard stayed silent. Then he slowly looked toward the corkboard, toward Elise's photograph. And finally, he spoke. Her real name wasn't Elise Harper. Ryan frowned instantly. What? Richard swallowed hard. It was Elise Bennett. Pure silence. Ryan's chest tightened. Bennett, as in their family name. Richard's voice shook badly now. She was my wife. The room exploded emotionally. What? Ryan shouted. Vanessa looked completely stunned too. You told me you were never married before, Diane. Richard rubbed his face with trembling hands. I lied. Ryan honestly felt dizzy. Nothing made sense anymore. She disappeared 30 years ago, he snapped. How do you casually leave that part out? Richard looked destroyed. Because I spent 30 years trying to survive the guilt. Ryan froze. Guilt. Then Richard finally revealed the truth he'd hidden for decades. After our son Caleb was born, Elise changed. Vanessa looked confused. Wait, Caleb really was Elise's son. Richard nodded slowly. Yes. Ryan felt like the floor disappeared beneath him. Vanessa had spent decades believing Caleb was her biological son because Elise begged her to raise him temporarily during a mental health crisis after the fire. But Elise never came back. And over time, everyone buried the truth differently. Richard continued emotionally. The fire at the lake house destroyed everything. Elise panicked after it happened. Ryan frowned. What actually caused the fire? Richard looked down. An argument. Silence. We were fighting about money, about Caleb, about everything. His voice cracked. She drove away that night emotionally unstable. Vanessa covered her mouth. Oh my God. Richard's eyes filled with tears. They found her car near Lake Michigan 3 days later. Ryan stared at him carefully, but they never found her body. Richard nodded weakly. She disappeared. Vanessa looked completely shaken now. So Caleb spent his entire life not knowing who his real mother was. Richard whispered, yes. The room became painfully quiet. Honestly, Ryan suddenly understood why Caleb became obsessed with uncovering the past. His entire identity had been built on secrets. Then Ryan pointed at the corkboard. What about Sophia Harper? Richard's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. And Ryan noticed immediately. Who is she? Richard sat down slowly on an overturned storage box, then quietly admitted the final truth. She was Elise's daughter. Ryan's stomach dropped. You had another child. Richard nodded once, but Sophia died when she was 5. Vanessa looked horrified. How? Richard's breathing became uneven. She was inside the lake house during the fire. Pure silence filled the room. Ryan physically stepped backward. No wonder his father spent 30 years hiding everything. No wonder Caleb became obsessed. This wasn't just an old affair. It was family tragedy buried beneath decades of lies. Then Richard quietly revealed something else. The investigator Caleb hired discovered Sophia's death records were sealed. Ryan frowned. Why would they be sealed? Richard looked ashamed. Because my father paid people to bury the story. That sentence changed everything again. The Bennett family wasn't just hiding emotional secrets. They'd hidden an entire tragedy from the public for decades. Vanessa wiped tears from her face, and Caleb disappeared trying to uncover all this. Richard nodded slowly. But he wasn't kidnapped. Ryan looked confused. What? Richard pulled something from his coat pocket. An envelope. Then handed it to Vanessa. Hands shook while opening it. Inside was a recent photograph. Caleb. Alive. Standing near a small cabin somewhere snowy. Vanessa gasped emotionally. Oh my God. Richard finally explained. Caleb found out the truth 3 months ago. He chose to disappear for a while. Ryan stared at the photo in disbelief. He's alive. Richard nodded. He needed space after learning his entire life was built on lies. Vanessa burst into tears instantly. Not sadness this time. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Then Richard looked toward Ryan emotionally. Spent 30 years believing secrets protected people. His voice cracked badly. But all they really do is destroy families, slowly. Nobody disagreed. Because every person inside that storage unit had lost years of trust. Because one man kept choosing silence over truth. A few months later, the Bennett family looked completely different. Not perfect, but honest. Diane separated from Richard temporarily to process everything. Vanessa finally spoke to Caleb through video calls again. And Ryan, he spent weeks trying to understand how one secret could reshape an entire family history overnight. But the strangest part, for the first time in years, Richard stopped pretending. No more hidden stories. No more fake peace. Just truth, messy, painful truth, and honestly, that finally gave the family a chance to heal. Because sometimes the most dangerous secrets aren't the ones people discover, they're the ones families spend decades pretending never existed. If this story shocked you, don't forget to subscribe to Evelyn Hart Revenge Stories for more emotional family drama, shocking secrets, and powerful storytelling every single day. And if you missed our previous story about the son who ignored his mother's tears for years in Phoenix, Arizona, you can find it waiting for you right now on the end screen.